It is Friday, May 27th, 2017, 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So you know what time it is. It's time for some... It is now 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, May 27th, 2017. So you know what time it is. It is time for some coin metal. And I got my damn alarm clock going off in the background here, and I can't even turn the damn thing off. Phones. One of these days they're going to be calling us to work, you know? It is Friday, and if you hadn't been hearing me yet, this is Frank Dashwood. It is May 27th, 2017, so you know what time it is. It is time for some coin metal. And I had planned on doing the Satoshi Nakamoto white paper one more time today, but I've changed my mind. And as a matter of fact, I'm working on something now for this specific show, and just to let you know how freeballing we are about this, it didn't even occur to me to do this until like a half an hour ago. So I'm still kind of working on that. Just a little bit of a channel update. Recently, I did an interview with Mr. Burgedev, and it was fantastic. It was pretty much everything I had ever anticipated it would be. And I posted it online, my magnum opiate, after I was done, and let me tell you, man, for as little actual, like, pre-planning that I do, the show, I kind of like plan it a little teeny tiny bit at a time, like a little bit ahead, you know, some like maybe 1 or 2 frames ahead of the movie. And when I do, I find that I travel a specific path with it. And while I was editing it, it dawned on me, it's like, man, this is fantastic. If this were a live staged performance, this would have just been perfect with the music that I used, the timing of the music, the subject matter at the time. It was beautiful, and it fell together exactly how I would want it to if I had planned it. So whether that goes away when you actually plan something, I don't know. I hope I never find out, because honestly, that was so much fun doing it the way I did last time. I really don't want to do it any differently. And we may be doing it again tonight with somebody else, but I'm still working on it. We're not entirely finalized on that yet. So, for the meantime, and just for the channel update, unfortunately, the music will no longer be included in my YouTube posts. Now, sometime in the future, I may work something out where I have like permission and shit, and I can actually do that and not worry about getting sued or anything like that. But until then, we're gonna play it cool, you know? We're gonna at least operate by the rules as they set out there on YouTube, because we're not really trying to get in trouble here, and we're not really trying to get anybody else in trouble. We're just trying to have a good time, trying to inform the public, maybe entertain a little bit. In any case, let's go ahead and throw down some music for our first dance, and I'm gonna get it going live with some fucking prong. You know, it's just the way to do it. You have to. And so here we go. A little bit of prong, no absolutes, here on Coin Metal. Whoa, 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 whoa. And that was Slipknot. Got to love the Slipknot. And that was spelled incorrectly. I believe is sick. Sick. S-I-C. Anyway, it was a very, very productive Get Your Ass Kicked at Jiu-Jitsu Friday. Got my ass kicked, most certainly. I definitely got what I went there for today. But, you know, that kind of happens every time I work out with this guy, Willie. He's just brutal. He's about my size, and yeah, he just puts it on me every time. Anyway, I did allude to having somebody on, and I am working on making that connection right now.
Hello.
And here he is. Would you care to introduce yourself, Mr. Sir?
My name is Satoshi Nakamoto.
Satoshi Nakamoto! No, go ahead. I found him.
Shh, quiet.
Are you sure you're not Craig Wright?
I am not Craig Wright.
Oh, come on, man. Fess up. So, give us your name, sir.
Bryce Weiner.
Mr. Bryce Weiner, at last. It has been a very, very long time, sir, since I've had you on the show.
No doubt, man. How you doing?
Oh, man. I couldn't even tell you. I'm on a different planet from by the last time I was talking to you. I've gone through several evolutions since then. So what about you, man?
Drugs are bad.
What about you? What's going on in the world of Bryce Weiner?
Oh my God. Let's see. We just had a great panel discussion last night at the law offices of Shepard Mullen. We had some Hollywood folks on the panel, and a surprise guest. There were a couple guys from Pandora actually were in the audience in attendance, and it was really cool. We got to do a bit of a Q&A session with them, and like literally ask them for the first time ever. Somebody asked them, "Hey, what's wrong with the music industry?" And right? Go imagine that, you know. And they actually told us, and it was amazing. Like, just everyone in the room, they were just utterly shocked at how open and candorous these guys were, and it was just great. So if you have a minute or two, I would recommend you hop up on my Twitter feed and check out that video. It's totally worth it. If you really want to know, like, what the barrier, why is blockchain technology taking so long to manifest itself in the public sphere, it's a really good panel to listen to, because it'll give you some insight as to, you know, this is just entertainment, and there's a whole lot of other industries that are more complex than entertainment, so they're even going to take even longer. But it gives you a sense of why things take so long.
Well, you know, I'm personally of the opinion that the reason why it has taken so long with regard to music in general is just that they're trying to figure out ways to put little gateways in it, so they're still making the vast majority of the money.
No, dude, that's man, it's not even that.
No,
and that's why I'm like, no. It's actually so fucked up that when you try to do direct payments, you can screw people over. And it's not anything more than a function of the complexity of trying to monetize music. And most of these music projects only look at streams. They don't look at the big picture of what the music industry is. You know, every shopping center you go into that has music playing, every radio station, every television show, every movie, everything. You know, anywhere you hear music in a commercial setting that's being monetized, and somebody has to pay for it.
Right.
So it goes beyond just streams. And that even a stream itself, like for instance Spotify, there's no like direct payment. Not so you get X number of streams, and then there's this big pool of money, and then everybody gets a slice of that money.
Okay.
So there, the algorithms that are used are so complex to calculate, and it has nothing to do with anything other than how music is monetized. You can sit in your home studio and do everything yourself, and you'll never make millions and millions and millions of dollars because you'll never be able to include and incorporate the expertise of other individuals, like sound engineers and that sort of shit.
Well,
and everybody gets a cut, and everybody gets paid because everybody contributed.
But what if nobody else is contributing, though? Doesn't that just save you the money of paying them?
No, it doesn't save you the money of paying them. Music is a collaborative thing. You ever sat in a jam session?
Oh, yeah.
You know, okay. Well, that's what I mean. Music is a communal, collaborative effort. And while, yes, one songwriter can sit down and bang out a song, that song then is interpreted by a performer who may actually change words. And so now they're a co-writer.
Right. But I don't know. I guess the itch that I'm getting there in the back of my dome is Trent Reznor. I mean, because he started off as a janitor at a sound studio, and he just recorded all of his shit in the off time.
Look, dude. Look, man. It's like, you know, you ever seen, like, okay, so I'm Gen X. You know, right. I'm 42 years old. Right. And I remember when Appetite for Destruction, Welcome to the Jungle came out. Right. And I don't know if you remember that music video, but it's this dude stepping off a bus in LA, and he's like, "Oh man, I'm going to make my dreams come true." Okay? That shit still happens.
Oh, I know it does.
The number of people that get that can never become a Chance the Rapper or a Trent Reznor, but can still monetize on their talent, is greater than the number of superstars. And you can monetize on your for maybe you don't have a Trent Reznor level of skill and gravitas. Maybe you're only good at like a little bit. So you get somebody else who adds in their little bit. Right. And now you've got something you can monetize. Trying to do it all yourself, sometimes does more harm than it's good. Than good.
Well, I've been experiencing a little bit of that myself with the production on this, because the time involved in making the last video was just atrocious. But it's because I'm not a sound engineer. I don't have all the sound engineer stuff, and so. But you know what, dude? The difference between me and the little bits that you're talking about is that the little bits aren't willing to just like open up a tutorial on Audacity and figure it out.
Well, maybe not. Maybe not.
I kind of get where you're going with that, with the collaborative effort thing, because you do need multiple perspectives. I'm finding that I'm running into walls like left and right with this thing, that I'm sure if I had 3 or 4 other heads banging together about it, that I probably wouldn't be running into them.
Probably more than likely. And even it's like a band or a small business or a tech startup or anything, you got to get other people to come on board and believe in the vision that you've created. And it doesn't matter if it's a song or a company.
Oh, on that point, I definitely have to agree. So what else? Now, with regard to what you're doing with blockchain, I heard like whispers and rumors about Tao, TAO, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about that while I got you here.
Whispers and rumors in regard to what?
TAO, like the whole project. Like what is the blockchain of music, as far as you're going about it? Or what can you disclose? Or
well, the way that we're going about it is we're not trying to come up with a solution. In fact, what we're doing is looking at aggregating every other solution that everyone else creates, and then providing a point at which the data, not necessarily the music, but the data that's generated can then be utilized by third parties. So, and if it's really an open blockchain, then nobody can tell us that we can't consume that data. And our project is basically going to eat the data from every other project in the space. That's literally part of the code that we released a couple of weeks ago.
Eat the code of other projects. Wow.
Not the code. Eat the data.
Oh, eat the data.
We will, yeah. I came up with a way to consume data from other blockchains. And utilizing this method, you're not, let's say library, and you're on library and you want to have your data and your music moved to Descent. You don't want your stuff offered on library anymore. So does that mean that all your old data lives on library, or can that be ported over to Descent? Well, nobody knows. You should be able to.
You would think.
You should be able to move it, because what happens if whatever blockchain Descent is using dies? Or what happens if the guys that are running the Descent project turn evil and you want to leave? These are not things that anybody ever wants to talk about. But for artists, these are real concerns.
Well, yeah, that's your revenue train.
Right, and so we're kind of approaching the entire issue from that perspective of how can we, assuming that even one or two of these projects are successful, then what can we do in order to make that entire experience more unified as far as the music industry is concerned? Because the music industry does not want 50 fucking blockchains.
Yeah.
They want a data source. And so we're looking at being able to provide that data source by aggregating both blockchain and non-blockchain data.
You're going to have to clarify something for me here. How exactly are they going to be doing a blockchain unless they have like their own nodes that are like mining it? I'm just not clear on that.
Trade secret. It's kind of no, seriously. I mean, it's kind of a secret at this point.
Oh, okay.
That's in fact that's missing from the code.
Oh, really?
That I posted. Yeah. So it's I'm releasing it very, very slowly because I don't want anyone to jump ahead of us in what we're doing.
Oh yeah.
And if if other people want to figure it out and publish their own version, that's totally up to them. But the ability to consume blockchain data, be it directly with a node or indirectly, really is only a matter of storage space and network connectivity. So, if you start to consider it within that kind of perspective, then I think it's a little bit easier to understand how these things can occur.
Nice. So now,
because
go ahead.
You don't have to. You can. How to put this?
Please feel free to take your time.
A node is not. A node has a network component and a data storage component. Mm-hmm. And if you boil down the network connectivity to something that is kind of universal to all blockchains, then you can just simply connect to any blockchain network and download the data. That's a much easier way of putting it.
I see. So you're not even messing with the node part then. Huh.
Well, somewhat. I mean, in the early versions, yes, but because this is none of this exists. We have to invent it as we go.
Oh yeah.
So the prototype versions, at least to prove various portions of the ecosystem, are going to use full nodes of each blockchain we consume. However, the end goal is not to have full nodes.
So, wow. That's interesting. Mining without even nodes.
It's not mining.
Oh.
We're not mining anything. We're consuming.
Consuming.
Right. So if data is 200 blocks deep in a chain, it's probably pretty accurate data. So nobody's going to fight that.
Right. It's verified.
Right. So if it's if it's already that verified, then do you really need to store all that other data? Because you're not repeating any transactions to the network. You're just reading it.
Right. So you're just recovering the data. You're not transacting it per se.
Yep. And there's nothing that says anywhere that anybody ever has to run a full node that reads every bit of data for everything ever anywhere. If you want to be able to transact, to submit secure transactions, well then yes, you need a full node. But if not, the whole point of the network is that it's trustless.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm receiving that data, I don't have to trust it. I'll just verify that the cryptography is correct. I don't have to do 7-layer deep fucking consensus verification. Nobody cares.
Or at least not that deeply, right?
Right.
But now, one thing, with regard to this type of data structure, wouldn't that make transferring the actual ownership of the data and the media itself that much easier?
Yep. That's the whole point. Because what we're looking to do is everybody's all fucking hot on this tokenization concept.
Right.
But if you can tokenize data related to a piece of music, you can then trade that data. And that data has a monetary value. So there's an entirely new economic concept that can then be derived from the tokenization of music-related data.
So what type of constituencies do you anticipate providing the demand for this?
Big ones.
No.
We've already had...
No. I'm not talking about that. I mean the data itself. You're talking about it being able to be exchanged. What kind of constituencies are going to be, say, scanning this? I mean, record companies or radio stations or...
DSPs.
PFPs?
DSP, Digital Service Provider. Those are like YouTube, Spotify, Pandora.
Okay. Nice.
So it's these barriers to data that prevent these blockchain projects from actually being used on those services. So we're actually solving a need that these blockchain projects don't even realize they have.
Wow. Yeah, I would think that that some sort of a way to tag a TXID with a particular piece of media would be another way to do that.
That's a little bit. That's actually part of the patent that I created for all this stuff, but that is not necessary because that's really that's like it's a completely different issue. I mean, because when you listen to a piece of music on Spotify and you want to know what the title of that song is, where does that data come from?
I would assume Spotify's servers.
Where does Spotify get it?
From the media producers.
Who?
The bands.
Specifically.
The bands or the record labels.
Nope.
Or music groups.
Sometimes, but not always, because there's data that a record label doesn't want Pandora to see, but Pandora would want to know in order to properly pay all the parties involved.
Now, what kind of effect do you think that would have on something like, say, my show, where, I recently got one... Dude, check this out. I think somebody finally bothered to report me to YouTube. I've been posting these episodes with music in them for quite a while, and because I'm not monetizing them, I wasn't worried about any kind of civil or whatever liability. But the possibility had always been bouncing around in my dome that they would use that kind of excuse to at least censor me from someplace, and it did happen with the last episode. But check this out.
Don't wear the tinfoil. YouTube actually signed a deal with independent record labels. That they signed the same deal with a group of independent record labels that they signed with the majors. So now pretty much every single piece of music that you could ever want to use in a YouTube broadcast is now covered. So it wasn't that. I don't think it was any. Especially if it was in the last couple of months.
No, it's like
because.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, see, the reason why I thought it was specifically this video is because I had been posting them for quite a while, and this is like the first time that I did an episode with actually a co-speaker, a guest. It was the first one that I interviewed Verge Dev on. Anyway, it's like that thing didn't even have 10 views on it, and it got reported and blocked in Canada. Now
so it's not reported. See, right. Now stop. It's not reported.
Okay.
Google has an AI that runs behind YouTube, and they have this enormous library of every song ever recorded.
Oh.
And it's like a gigantic automated version of like Shazam or Shazam. So, like, it'll listen to your video as you upload it,
right,
and then compare the audio to its vast library of millions of songs. And if it finds a hit, it goes, up, copyright, knock it down.
Okay. Yeah, well,
sometimes it will be that a song isn't in that database, and then YouTube will add it, and then suddenly your video will get taken offline.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I reposted it without any of the music and just made it a Canada safe version so everybody could watch it.
Yeah, I mean that's essentially what you do, and of course it's still there, right? Because the only thing that anybody really said boo about was the music, and all that's automated. There's no people doing that anymore. Okay. That's all programmatic.
Yeah, I wondered if they were doing any kind of proactive stuff because none of my other stuff is flagged. And it's got just as much commercial music in it, so I'm not even going to worry about it. But what I am
and even then, it's a matter of the licensing.
Yeah.
It could be that, and you said for Canada it was banned. Yeah. So it could be something specific to the laws of Canada, which required YouTube to take it down.
It could be. But in any case, there is a Canada safe version now. So the Canadians, you can now listen to Coin Metal 523. It's up there, Canada safe version. But in any case, like I said, that kind of brought it home for me, the whole copyright thing. And so I was just like, okay, how am I going to fight this thing? Am I going to work around it or whatever? And I just said, fuck it. I can't monetize my shit now, so if I take all the music out, I can monetize it. And so I just figured I would roll with it like that.
I mean, also gets kind of boring, but
I can imagine. But the thing is I do keep it pretty upbeat by getting the music breaks in there, and so. And plus, the videos are a lot shorter. They're like an hour shorter without any of the music in it. So, but
indeed.
Well, you got to adapt and move on. Adapt and overcome.
No, totally. So listen, man, I only had a few minutes to stop by, but I wanted to drop in and say hello. And I'm actually on the road, so I'm about to lose you. I'm driving through the mountains here.
All right, sir. Well, it has been a pleasure having you on, and we certainly would like to have you on again sometime in the near future. I'm definitely wanting to hear more about this Tao stuff.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Frank. We'll talk soon.
All right, man. Thank you very much, Bryce. And that was Mr. Bryce Weiner. I don't know what word for him, because he did earn quite a reputation earlier on in his exposing himself to crypto. I mean, kind of like an old-fashioned guy walking around with the trench coat on, completely nude underneath, exposing himself to old ladies and shit. But I mean, I can just see him doing that, honestly. But he's I guess matured and become a functional member of society from his degenerate days in the early era of crypto. And has actually made himself socially useful. You've got to look up to that, definitely. In any case, let's go ahead and break it up with a little bit of music, and then we will dive into the Satoshi Nakamoto white paper as previously threatened. And seeing as I haven't actually picked anything out, I'm going to have to scroll, find the good stuff, and lay it on you. And, I don't know, punk is not dead. That sounds like a possible. Let's do it. Venom, Punk's Not Dead, here on Coin Metal. And that was Damage Incorporated by Metallica. Had to go a little old school there, kind of dig a little deeper into the old repertoire. Yes, it was a real pleasure having Mr. Bryce Weiner on here. I definitely want to have him on here for a longer show one of these times, hopefully while he's not driving. I was starting to get a little worried by the sounds that I was hearing around him. I'm like, dude, are you in a monsoon or something? But no, it turns out it's just road noise. Anyway, yeah, as I started saying before we did actually get Mr. Bryce Weiner on here, it was a terribly productive day at Jiu-Jitsu. It's a really interesting dynamic when you only have a few people in the class, because the instructor could spend a little more time kind of critiquing and observing your technique and kind of seeing where you're going. And I'm definitely privileged to have Coach Tyler helping me out with a lot of things. It's really good to have people in your life that reflect your value to them. Your participation in their life actually means something. It's good to have that around you, whether that be your parents or your instructors, or, and if you don't have any instructors in life, I don't think you're living. If you're not like doing something to actively learn in life, I don't think you're living. And I think that's really what you're supposed to be doing, is with any given moment, looking to see what the lessons are to be had, and trying to find out exactly how best to deal with the situations. It's like this thing with YouTube. I could freak out and I could throw a fit and whatever, but what would be the point of all that? Am I still able to post my stuff on there for everybody to listen to who would like to listen to it? Yeah. Do I have to include all the commercial music? No. It's not really that important to the overall message. Because, ultimately music really doesn't have too much to do with cryptocurrencies as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I can see the practicality of the projects that Bryce is working on, because he is right about one thing. The music industry is kind of screwed up. I mean, there's so many little goofs and gimmies and whatnot, and I really think that collaboration is necessary, but I think it's a matter of who you have to collaborate with. In all of these stories about bands and whatnot that you hear, a lot of times, like you saw, it was a common theme in like the 70s and 80s, where the first thing, as a matter of fact, if you watch the Doors movie, you can see this, where it was just casually accepted that the first thing that would happen to a band when a major producer took notice of them or whatever was that they tried to isolate the talent and then rebuild the band around the talent to package it and sell it. And, I suppose that's like the best way that they thought to do it, but in my mind, real art comes from organic action, rather than contrivances and constructions. I mean, I can see the point of putting people that are very talented with other people who are just as talented. And I can see how that might appear as though there was this kind of, drive the wedge and get the guy away from the people that helped him get to where he is, and put him in a kind of a band where he's forced to have to make compromises with what he's doing and whatnot, and before you know it, you got a Metallica Black album. Just kidding. Point being that it's not like the product that started. You know what I mean? And I think that we see a lot of that in media, and I don't think it's like the prevalent percentage of it, but I think that there's enough of it going on out there that it kind of puts a bad stain on everything. It's like with regard to what Bryce was talking about with Welcome to the Jungle. That whole thing was, I don't know how to explain that. I mean, because it was the typical scene, like every horror that you see in that video of, some dumb shit 17-year-old come out from Ohio, still got the goddamn wheat in between his teeth. He gets off the bus with a backpack and a guitar case and is like immediately mugged, or, he's taken up heroin within a week, or, dating strippers and all kinds of weird shit. Not that there's anything wrong with dating strippers. But the point being that was Los Angeles, or more like Hollywood. That was Hollywood from it still is Hollywood. What am I talking about? I almost overqualified that. It's Hollywood. Hollywood is just like that. That happens every day in Hollywood, and it's really a shame. Kids come out there and they've got all that vibrant energy, and they just want to get up on the stage with the mic and do the thing and play the guitar and the headbang and the fingers, and it's cool. And before they know it, they're snorting meth off of a hooker, and they're doing all kinds of cool stuff, and then the downfall, and they're bagging groceries at Albertsons. I mean, that happens every day, literally, and I find it very disturbing. That's such a goal. The being in that limelight. I'm happy just doing what I'm doing here. If this ever gets really popular, cool. I expect it to. I expect people to, in the longer term, I expect that people are going to be reflecting back on what I was doing now and saying, this guy knew what he was talking about. This guy had a clue of what was going on around him with regard to cryptocurrencies. And I believe that will be the case, that in the longer term, people are going to understand what I'm saying. I could be wrong. I could be completely off base with my analysis of what's going on in cryptocurrencies, but I started off in this pretty much before Bitcoin was anything, and I've watched it progress in a very hasty fashion, and I expect that it will stay at this level of intensity of new novelty for maybe a little while longer, but I don't know that the forward push of developers is enough to reach escape velocity, to where it's like paradigm redefining, to where we don't have the old legacy anymore because it all died off. It just couldn't compete anymore. I mean, maybe that'll happen in the longer term via attrition. Maybe. Whether or not any newer constituencies will arise, that's the question. Any new participant that doesn't have this old stain, that isn't keeping alive the old parasites that needed to die like a couple centuries ago. I mean, because in all honesty, when I look around me, I see the results of what I consider to be a silly mentality that, you could just borrow into infinity and you could spend that money on whatever you wanted to, and that everything would turn out as it said it would on the piece of paper that it was presented to you in. And it never turns out that way. I think the best that you can hope for is to leave the gates open, keep it free and relatively limited as far as regulation is concerned. I mean, really, why do we have to invent another term for theft? Why do we have to invent another term or another law or another jail sentence for fraud? A fraudulent activity is a fraudulent activity. If you intentionally deceive people coming in the door saying that you're going to do X and you don't do X, but you do get Y anyway, that's a fraudulent behavior. If you intend to never do X and just get the Y and run, that's fraud. That's theft. I mean, why do we have to create a new idea for what is theft in this space? I mean, we know what theft is. You know when you've been stolen from. And we've seen more than enough times in cryptocurrencies that projects didn't fail because there was fraud involved. There have been plenty of them that were fraudulent, and that we can have that for another day. But I mean, there's plenty of legitimate projects in cryptocurrencies where they had the code and they were running the project and everything was fine, but they still failed anyway. Now, would I consider that to be a fraudulent activity? No. We gave it our best try. We fell on our face. We're going to go back to the drawing board and maybe come back with something better. But that's not a fraudulent activity. Now, if I did that knowing that there's a significant chance that it's going to crash and burn, but I overpromise it anyway, okay, now we're talking about fraudulent activity. But again, we don't have to create a new paradigm of crime. We can examine the books and determine that from the volume of cocaine and the company of prostitutes that you were purchasing with the money, that this is not a recreational thing. This is habitual, and you charged everybody for it, but you didn't really do anything to earn it. You didn't give them any value for their money and had no intention to. We can tell those sort of things. We've had plenty of experience with the human mind and what could we could reasonably constitute or consider to be criminal activity. But in any case, I want to go ahead and throw down a little bit more music at the moment, and then, as promised and threatened at this point, we are going to dive back into the Satoshi Nakamoto white paper. So anyway, I do want to do a little bit of Meshuggah here, because I just haven't played any yet. A little bit of Bleed off of Obzen here on Coin Metal. And that was Meshuggah with Bleed. Yeah, just a little taste of some Meshuggah, We gotta have that in our lives every once in a while. Just kind of keep things exciting. Kind of get that heart rate pumping a little bit. And so yeah, every once in a while I read this on the show because sometimes I think people just forget exactly what we're working on here, or exactly where we started from, or what it was intended to be when it began. I do think it's very important to touch back down to reality every once in a while and get back away from all of our high-flying ideas about tokenized this and tokenized that and blockchain this, and understand that most of what's being proposed as far as companies are concerned, these are all things that we probably could be doing on our own on top of Bitcoin without requiring the entire network to do it. And I think that's kind of unfortunate that people are motivated to point a gun at the head of the miners and try and force them to change what they're doing. I think it's very unfortunate. In any case, I think that the people holding that gun either never knew this, read it and dismissed it, or have simply forgotten all about it. But here it is. Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system by Satoshi Nakamoto. Abstract. A purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash would allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. Digital signatures provide part of the solution, but the main benefits are lost if a trusted third party is still required to prevent double spending. We propose a solution to the double spending problem using a peer-to-peer network. The network timestamps transactions by hashing them into an ongoing chain of hash-based proof of work, forming a record that cannot be changed without redoing the proof of work. The longest chain not only serves as proof of the sequence of events witnessed, but proof that it came from the largest pool of CPU power. As long as the majority of CPU power is controlled by nodes that are not cooperating to attack the network, they'll generate the longest chain and outpace attackers. The network itself requires minimal structure. Messages are broadcast on a best effort basis, and nodes can leave and rejoin the network at will, accepting the longest proof of work chain as the proof of what happened while they were gone. Alright. Introduction. Commerce on the internet has come to rely almost exclusively on financial institutions serving as trusted third parties to process electronic payments. While the system works well enough for most transactions, it still suffers from the inherent weaknesses of the trust-based model. Completely non-reversible transactions are not really possible since financial institutions cannot avoid mediating disputes. The cost of mediation increases transaction costs, limiting the minimal practical transaction size and cutting off the possibility for small casual transactions. And there is a broader cost in the loss of ability to make non-reversible payments for non-reversible services. With the possibility of reversal, the need for trust spreads. Merchants must be wary of their customers, hassling them for more information than they would otherwise need. A certain percentage of fraud is accepted as unavoidable. These costs and payment uncertainties can be avoided in person by using physical currency. But no mechanism exists to make payments over a communications channel without a trusted third party, or a trusted party. What is needed is an electronic payment system based on cryptographic proof instead of trust, allowing any two willing parties to transact directly with each other without the need for a trusted third party. Transactions that are computationally impractical to reverse would protect sellers from fraud, and routine escrow mechanisms could easily be implemented to protect buyers. In this paper, we propose a solution to the double spending problem using a peer-to-peer distributed timestamp server to generate computational proof of the chronological order of transactions. The system is more secure as long as honest nodes collectively control more CPU power than any cooperating group of attacker nodes. Alright, that was page 1. 2. Transactions. We define an electronic coin as a chain of digital signatures. Each owner transfers the coin to the next by digitally signing a hash of the previous transaction and the public key of the next owner, and adding these to the end of the coin. A payer can verify the signatures to verify the chain of ownership. The problem, of course, is that, and there's a diagram here, by the way, and I'm not going to describe it. The problem, of course, is the payee can't verify that one of the owners did not double spend the coin. A common solution is to introduce a trusted central authority, or mint, that checks every transaction for double spending. After each transaction, the coin must be returned to the mint to issue a new coin, and only coins issued directly from the mint are trusted not to be double spent. The problem with this solution is that the fate of the entire money system depends on the company running the mint, with every transaction having to go through them, just like a bank. We need a way for the payee to know that the previous owners did not sign any earlier transactions. For our purposes, the earliest transaction is the one that counts, so we don't care about later attempts to double spend. The only way to confirm the absence of a transaction is to be aware of all transactions. In the mint-based model, the mint was aware of all transactions and decided which arrived first. To accomplish this without a trusted party, transactions must be publicly announced, and we need a system for participants to agree on a single history of the order in which they were received. The payee needs proof at the time of each transaction that the majority of notes agreed it was the first received. Number 3, the timestamp server. The solution we propose begins with a timestamp server. A timestamp server works by taking a hash of a block of items to be timestamped and widely publishing the hash, such as in a newspaper or Usenet post. The timestamp proves that the data must have existed at the time, obviously in order to get into the hash. Each timestamp includes the previous timestamp in its hash, forming a chain, with each additional timestamp reinforcing the ones before it. Proof of work, number 4, proof of work. To implement a distributed timestamp server on a peer-to-peer basis, we will need to use a proof of work system similar to Adam Back's Hashcash rather than a newspaper or Usenet posts. The proof of work involves scanning for a value that, when hashed, such as with SHA-256, the hash begins with a number of 0 bits. The average work required is exponential in the number of 0 bits required and can be verified by executing a single hash. For our timestamp network, we implement the proof of work by incrementing a nonce in the block until a value is found that gives the block's hash the required 0 bits. Once the CPU effort has been expended to make it satisfy the proof of work, the block cannot be changed without redoing the work. As later blocks are chained after it, the work to change the block would include redoing all of the blocks after it. The proof of work also solves the problem of determining representation in majority decision making. If the majority were based on one IP address, one vote, it could be subverted by anyone able to allocate many IPs. Proof of work is essentially one CPU, one vote. The majority decision is represented by the longest chain, which has the greatest proof of work effort invested in it. If a majority of CPU power is controlled by honest nodes, the honest chain will grow the fastest and outpace any competing chains. To modify a pass block, an attacker would have to redo the proof of work of the block and all blocks after it, and then catch up with with and surpass the work of honest nodes. We will show later that the probability of a slower attacker catching up diminishes exponentially as subsequent blocks are added. To compensate for increasing hardware speed and varying interest in running nodes over time, the proof of work difficulty is determined by a moving average targeting an average number of blocks per hour. If they're generated too fast, the difficulty increases. Number 5, network. The steps to run the network are as follows. Number 1, new transactions are broadcast to all nodes. Number 2, each node collects new transactions into a block. Number 3, each node works on finding a difficult proof of work for its block. Number 4, when a node finds a proof of work, it broadcasts the block to all nodes. Number 5, nodes accept the block only if all transactions in it are valid and not already spent. Number 6, nodes express their acceptance of the block by working on creating the next block in the chain, using the hash of the accepted block as the previous hash. Nodes always consider the longest chain to be the correct one and will keep working on extending it. If two nodes broadcast different versions of the next block simultaneously, some nodes may receive one or the other first. In that case, they work on the first one they received, but save the other branch in case it becomes longer. The tie will be broken when the next proof of work is found and one branch becomes longer. The nodes that were working on the other branch will then switch to the longer one. And somebody is flashing me here. I gotta check out what it is. Yeah. Okay. Hold on one moment. I gotta make a mild adjustment here because somebody's requesting something here. I gotta attend the IRC chat room as well. Anyway, we weren't quite done with number 5, which was network, so here you go. I'm gonna finish it up right now. New transaction broadcasts do not necessarily need to reach all nodes. As they reach many nodes, they will get into a block before long. Block broadcasts are also tolerant of dropped messages. If a node does not receive a block, it will request it when it receives the next block and realizes it missed one. Number 6, incentive. By convention, the first transaction in a block is a special transaction that starts a new coin owned by the creator of the block. This adds an incentive for nodes to support the network and provides a way to initially distribute coins into circulation since there is no central authority to issue them. The steady addition of a constant amount of new coins is analogous to gold miners expending resources to add gold into circulation. In our case, it is CPU time and electricity that is expended. The incentive can also be funded with transaction fees. If the output value of the transactions is less than its input value, the difference is a transaction fee that is added to the incentive value of the block containing the transaction. Once a predetermined number of coins have entered circulation, the incentive can transition entirely to transaction fees and can be completely inflation-free. The incentive may help encourage nodes to stay honest. If a greedy attacker is able to assemble more CPU power than all honest nodes, he would have to choose between using it to defraud people by stealing back his payments or using it to generate new coins. He ought to find it more profitable to play by the rules, such rules that favor him with more new coins than everyone else combined, than to undermine the system and the validity of his own wealth. Reclaiming disk space. Once the latest transaction in a coin is buried under enough blocks, the spent transactions before it can be discarded to save disk space. To facilitate this without breaking the block's hash, transactions are hashed into a Merkle tree with only the root included in the block's hash. Old blocks can then be compacted by stubbing off branches of the tree. The interior hashes do not need to be stored. A block header with, and there are a pair of diagrams here by the way. A block header with no transactions would be about 80 bytes. If we suppose blocks are generated every 10 minutes, 80 bytes times 6 times 24 times 365 equals 4.2 megabytes per year. With computer systems typically selling with 2 gigabytes of RAM as of 2008 and Moore's Law predicting current growth of 1.2 gigabytes per year, storage should not be a problem even if the block headers must be kept in memory. Number 8. Simplified payment verification. It is possible to verify payments without running a full network node. A user only needs to keep a copy of the block headers of the longest proof of work chain, which he can get by querying the network nodes until he's convinced he has the longest chain and obtain the Merkle branch linking the transaction to the block it's timestamped in. He can't check the transaction for himself, but by linking it to a place in the chain, he can see that a network node has accepted it, and blocks added after it further confirm the network has accepted it. As such, the verification is reliable as long as honest nodes control the network, but is more vulnerable if the network is overpowered by an attacker. While network nodes can verify transactions for themselves, the simplified method can be fooled by an attacker's fabricated transactions for as long as the attacker can continue to overpower the network. One strategy to protect against this would be to accept alerts from network nodes when they detect an invalid block, prompting the user's software to download the full block and alerted transactions to confirm the inconsistency. Businesses that receive frequent payments will probably still want to run their own nodes for more independent security and quicker verification. And just a side note on that, people in SegWit, for some stupid reason, they act like that's such a big pain in the ass to do. And personally, I think it just adds to the network density and thus the security. Anyway, continuing on, number 9, combining and splitting value. Although it would be possible to handle coins individually, it would be unwieldy to make a separate transaction for every cent in a transfer. To allow value to be split and combined, transactions contain multiple inputs and outputs. Normally, there will be either a single input from a larger previous transaction or multiple inputs combining smaller amounts, and at most 2 outputs. One for the payment and one returning the change, if any, back to the sender. It should be noted that fan out, where a transaction depends on several transactions and those transactions depend on many more, is not a problem here. There is never the need to extract a single standalone copy of a transaction's history. 10. Privacy. The traditional banking model achieves a level of privacy by limiting access to information to the parties involved and the trusted third party. The necessity to announce all transactions publicly precludes this method, but privacy can still be maintained by breaking the flow of information in another place, by keeping public keys anonymous. The public can see that someone is sending an amount to someone else, but without information linking the transaction to anyone. This is similar to the level of information released by stock exchanges where the time and size of individual trades, the tape, is made public, but without telling who the parties were. And the traditional model goes identities, transactions, trusted third party, counterparty to the public. The new privacy model goes identities, then there's a barrier in between, and then transactions, and then arrow to public. Add an additional firewall. A new key pair should be used for each transaction to keep them from being linked to a common owner. Some linking is unavoidable with multiple input transactions, which necessarily reveal that their inputs were owned by the same owner. The risk is that if the owner of a key is revealed, linking could reveal other transactions that belonged to the same owner. Calculations. We consider the scenario of an attacker trying to generate an alternate chain faster than the honest chain. Even if this is accomplished, it does not throw the system open to arbitrary changes, such as creating value out of thin air or taking money that never belonged to the attacker. Nodes are not going to accept an invalid transaction as payment, and honest nodes will never accept a block containing them. An attacker can only try to change one of his own transactions to take back money he recently spent. The race between the honest chain and an attacker chain can be characterized as a binomial random walk. The success event is the longest chain being extended by one block, increasing its lead by +1. And the failure event is the attacker's chain being extended by one block, reducing the gap by -1. The probability of an attacker catching up from a given deficit is analogous to a gambler's ruin problem. Suppose a gambler with an unlimited credit starts at a deficit and plays potentially an infinite number of trials to reach break-even. We can calculate the probability he ever reaches break-even or that an attacker ever catches up with the honest chain as follows. And I'm not going to read all of it because it breaks down into an equation, and I'm not going to go there. Just because I'm not entirely certain how to read mathematical equations in a sentence form, or I'm not that proficient with math, so I'm not going to even try at this point. Given our assumption that P is greater than Q, the probability drops exponentially as the number of blocks the attacker has to catch up with increases. With the odds against him, if he doesn't make a lucky lunge forward early on, his chances become vanishingly small as he falls further behind. We now consider how long the recipient of a new transaction needs to wait before being sufficiently certain the sender can't change the transaction. We assume the sender is an attacker who wants to make the recipient believe he paid him for a while, then switch it to pay back to himself after some time has passed. The receiver will be alerted when that happens, but the sender hopes it will be too late. The receiver generates a new key pair and gives the public key to the sender shortly before signing. This prevents the sender from preparing a chain of blocks ahead of time by working on it continuously until he is lucky enough to get far enough ahead, then executing the transaction at that moment. Once the transaction is sent, the dishonest sender starts working in secret on a parallel chain containing an alternate version of his transaction. The recipient waits until the transaction has been added to a block and 2 blocks have been linked after it. He doesn't know the exact amount of progress the attacker has made, but assuming the honest blocks took the average expected time per block, the attacker's potential progress will be a Poisson distribution with the expected value. I'm not going to go into that. To get the probability an attacker will blah blah blah, I'm not going to go into that, but breaking down into C, maybe I could read that one to you here. Double P equals, okay, I'm sorry, include bracket, math.h, no, I'm not going to try and read that to you either. All right. I'm going to read the conclusion, though, here. Number 12. We have proposed a system for electronic transactions without relying on trust. We started with the usual framework of coins made from digital signatures, which provides strong control of ownership, but is incomplete without a way to prevent double spending. To solve this, we proposed a peer-to-peer network using proof of work to record a public history of transactions that quickly becomes computationally impractical for an attacker to change if honest nodes control the majority of CPU power. The network is robust in its unstructured simplicity. Nodes work all at once with little coordination. They do not need to be identified since messages are not routed to any particular place and only need to be delivered on a best effort basis. Nodes can leave and rejoin the network at will, accepting the proof of work chain as proof of what happened while they were gone. They vote with their CPU power, expressing their acceptance of valid blocks by working on extending them and rejecting invalid blocks by refusing to work on them. Any needed rules and incentives can be enforced with this consensus mechanism. And that concludes the Bitcoin Whitepaper. It's terribly refreshing to read that every once in a while. I mean, the simplicity of the idea is it's pretty awesome, really. That you could get a network working together to solve a common problem, and in the process of doing so, verifying all the transactions that were occurring on the network while that was occurring. And there's more to it. I could go on and on and on and on and on about it, but again, I think a lot of people have been trying to get away from the idea that I just presented to you. And one of the ways that they're trying to do that is by introducing the need for a mitigating third party. And in the case of segregated witness, that's most widely expressed as the Lightning Node network, because they propose to change the data structure of the block to where all of the TXIDs are on the outside of it instead of hashed into the block. Personally, I believe that this will lead to editing in the Lightning Node networks, and by the time they touch back down to the blockchain, I envision that they basically made it, I think, legislatively tough to be a Lightning Node operator. I think that the descriptions of how the Lightning Network works basically put the title of custodian on you, and when you're broadcasting back out to the blockchain, I think that it fits the description of money transmitter. That's just me. I'm pretty sure, though. I mean, I've read all the legislation that I read the bit license on this show. That humongous, like, I want to say it was like 20 page or 26 pages. It was fucking sickening. But basically, what it said was that the commissioner that they were going to put in charge at the NYDFS over this thing, he would basically have carte blanche over crypto activity. I mean, he would be able to dictate to anybody operating within the state of New York whether or not they actually had to apply for a bit license. And the terms were so arbitrarily set. I mean, like, they didn't even really bother with qualifications except to suggest that if they were unreasonable at any point, that they might be considered under review by some sort of oversight committee. And that was in the case within, I don't know if it's in bit license, but I do know it's within Kashit license, the AB 1123, if you want to read the text on that. That basically their equivalent of the head of the NYDFS would have that kind of control. I mean, and not only that, they'd have so much control over who could have a bit license in California, or their version of it, and what terms that they had to comply with in order to get it, that the commissioner could basically just say, you're my nephew, and I want to get you hooked up, and so ordinary people have to apply for this thing, but I'm going to go ahead and give you a provisional license. And all you got to do is just make sure you don't rip too many people off, and you can do business this way. And I envision that will be the case if they ever pass that thing, that their commissioner, their head will without any real oversight have that kind of control over crypto, at least within their state of California. Anyway, let's go ahead and drop down into some music. I've bored you enough with my voice, I'm sure. And I have been wanting to play some newer stuff, or at least newer for my collection, which is quite significant, I must say. I'm not entirely certain what to put in. I mean, I've already played some Prong. I know. Here we go. Time by Anthrax, off of Persistence of Time, here on Coin Metal. And unfortunately, that was the end of this episode. For whatever reason, my program managed to cut out on me and rob us of a big diatribe against BIP8, BIP9, BIP148, BIP149, and basically describing how they're both little more than banker-inspired coup patches. Anyway, we will be back on Monday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So until then, have an excellent weekend. Trade safe. Do your homework. And watch out for your bunghole, because nobody else will do it for you. Thanks again for listening, and y'all have an excellent day.